Hello, everyone. So today we are going to talk about serverless, kind of a nice topic. Today I want to show you Oracle Functions. Oracle Functions is the service that allows you to put serverless functions on the cloud. There is a little bit more on top of this that I'm going to show you as well how to offer that functionality that you write on your function inside of an API gateway. API gateway is just a way to aggregate all your serverless functions into one single endpoint that your users can use to connect, to make calls, to ask for your information, the information you want to offer through that API gateway and the serverless functions. First of all, why serverless? In my opinion, serverless covers an important role in new development and cloud native. Basically, serverless allows us to don't really care about the infrastructure at any level, not networking, not compute, not storage. You just want to run your code. So it's a matter of start cherry picking those parts of your system that are going to suit on serverless approach. For example, if I have to create a website, typical e-commerce, and the e-commerce is going to give you, let's say, websites, not websites, but products, different products of any kind that they are going to have an image that your customer is going to buy or do any type of research on the type of products you have, picking different pictures and so on. Those type of things are really a good option for serverless. So if the user is uploading a new file that is, for example, the picture of the new product that is going to be available, you definitely can go to serverless functions, give the picture to that serverless function, and it's going to help you storing that into whatever object storage or any type of storage you think it suits for the case. There is also other type of functionalities that you can store there. So after someone put that image on the system, maybe you decide that it's better if you have a small version of that picture. Or if someone uploads a video and you want to run some machine learning algorithms on that, maybe you can kick off that processing with a serverless function. So it's really interesting, for example, that Oracle has these cloud events that are going to kick off when, for example, someone put a picture on an object. And that is going to ask for a serverless function to be executed with the information of that object. So those are the type of things that you have to look for. We have customers that implement everything on serverless. In that case, you have to be able to make sure that you can handle the amount of serverless functions that you have to handle. Oracle is going to help you with that, but let's start small, and I'm going to show you how you can create a small serverless function and how you can call that from an API gateway. So let's dive in. I'm here on the Oracle Cloud Web Console. I'm in UK region, and what I'm going to show you is that I have several networkings, virtual cloud networks. The one that I'm going to use is the demo VCN. So basically, this is just a public and a private subnet with these CIDR blocks. This is going to be like the home of the serverless function and the API gateway. Now let's go to API gateway that is under developer services. And we can find here really interesting things. Kubernetes clusters, in case you want to deploy serverless functions, but also some other services on pods. You have as well the container registry. The container registry is just a Docker compliance API for a Docker registry. So you can push your images there for your Docker containers. By the way, functions, serverless functions is not more than, and this is an oversimplification, I know, but it's just a Docker image with some bindings to be able to call the function that is being executed inside. So we will use this as well. Functions, this is why we are here today, and API gateways. So let's go to API gateways. I want to show you that I have some of them that are deleted, so I'm going to create one. But before that, let's start with the serverless function. And then I will create a gateway, and I'm going to call the gateway that is going to call our serverless function. So let's come back, developer services, functions. And usually I would recommend you to create an application. An application is just a context, a bounded context. So all the functions that live inside of this application are going to share some common context in the terms of the business logic. Let's create one. Let's say app FN. And I'm going to pick my VCN, so demo VCN. I'm going to pick one of the public subnets, and I'm going to click create. That's good. It's already created. I'm going to step in, and then you see that we can create functions. An easy way to do it, and this is going to be simple enough for just testing purpose. You go to get started, and here there is instructions on how to do it, and you have two options. Local setup, that means you are going to set up the FN project on your browser, on your computer, on your local computer. And FN project is just the open source project that is behind Oracle Cloud, okay? So this is the engine of the serverless function. And this is exactly what we use to power Oracle functions. So you can find really nice information. You can run the whole service on your local machine, and that is really interesting if you want to run tests on a Jenkins or any other continuous integration and continuous delivery. You don't really depend on the cloud provider to do that. So that would be one option. For a small test, you can use Cloud Shell. And Cloud Shell is just a really nice way to have a Linux machine pre-configured with all the tools that you need as developer and as operator. And you have access to the OCI, CLI, the command line, and it's already there, and you don't have to really pay for it. It's part of the Oracle Cloud and your tenancy. You can come here and click Launch Cloud Shell, or go to, in any place of the console, you can go to this icon at the top and click Cloud Shell. This is going to kick off a virtual machine with all the configuration already there. As you can see, it's already up and running. And this is just a Linux. So we are going to follow the steps one by one. And I'm already done this a couple of times, so part of the things are already created, but I'm going to do all the steps so you see more or less what to expect. So FN is the command line for the serverless functions framework. So FN, and I'm going to list the context. Context is, if you have different environments, you are going to have different context. It's like the kubectl context for Kubernetes. So if I list that, I'm going to see, okay, I have the default, that is the local one. I have two for different regions, one from Frankfurt and the other from London. Because I'm in London, this one is already the default context, the current context. So I don't need to run this part. But in case it's the first time, it's probably on default, so you have to run that. So you will copy this and paste it on the console. At the moment, as you can see, and I'm going to put this bigger, it would definitely help you. So in this case, I see, because that star icon, I see that is my current context. So the UK, that's good. And it also have really good information here. So there is a registry associated with this. And the registry is basically that Docker registry that we mentioned before, where all the images that I'm running are going to be available for. So, okay, let's go for it. This one is to associate my compartment to the context. So I already ran that, but I'm going to run it again. So you see more or less what type of thing. So it's saying that we already update the context and it's going to be connected with my compartment. And this is the identification of my compartment. Okay, let's cover some more topics, more steps. We can update the context with the registry. I already done that. So basically what you are going to put is that command, and then you are going to put / and the name of your repository for your Docker images. At the moment, for me, we are using that one. So app.fn, I'm happy with that. So I'm not going to run that command. You generate a auth token. The auth token is a way to authenticate a request against Oracle Cloud. And in this case, is what we are going to use to be able to log in into the Docker registry. So we have to put this, copy that. I already logged into that Docker registry, so I'm not going to do it. But Docker login the user, and the user is dynamic. So in my case, that one is my user, the user that I should use. In your case, it will be your specific user that you need to use. Copy, paste, run it, and it's going to ask for the password. The password is the auth token that we generate in the step before. That is all good. So now it's time for list my apps. So basically we are going to have one app, the app that just created. There it is, and that is app.fn with that identifier. Very good. Now, time for run our first serverless function. I'm going to put this bigger because I don't need the steps for this. But what we are going to do here is to init runtime node. So this function is going to contain Node.js as the language, and I'm going to call this test. And you have to type it correctly. That is mandatory. So it's going to create a folder called test. So if we step into that test folder, we clear and we list, we are going to see that we have a JSON, a JavaScript file. We have the YAML file that contains some metadata that is needed for the function to run, and the package.json that is basically our dependencies. So let's take a look into the YAML file. The YAML file contains information about the schema version. So basically it's the version of this YAML file, metadata. It's going to contain as well the name of the function, the version of the function. Every time we deploy, this function is going to bump the version unless you indicate otherwise. And it's going to ask as well for the runtime, in this case Node. So it's expecting Node code to be inside of the code. And also we are going to say, okay, my entry point, like in Docker file. And this is going to be Node executing my func.js. Simple. I'm going to exit and I'm going to take a look into func.js. Simple. So in this case, we are requiring the FN project FDK. So basically the function developer kit. It's going to have a fdk.handle. That is going to be the function that we are going to execute every time someone requests the execution of that function. And it's going to have a parameter. And that parameter is input that contains the input of the function. If you want to upload a picture, the picture will be embedded in that input. if you want to put the name, for example, if you want to say hello world and you want to put the name on that, what you can do is to put that name inside of the input. So in this case, it's simple. I'm defaulting that into world. I'm checking if there is an input name variable, and in that case, I override that variable with the new value. I'm going to put a trace here so I can log my function after execution in case there is any error or you want to know how the execution was proceeding. And the final return, that is going to return a JSON file that contains message and the message that is hello and the name. Simple. Let's exit. And now it's time for fn, deploy. We are going to indicate the app that we want to deploy this function into. And our application is app fn. So this is going to start building the Docker image. It's going to push the Docker image to Docker registry. We are going to check that. And it's also going to bump the version of the function. So every time you are deploying, you are putting a new version into Oracle functions, and that makes sense. Okay, so everything went well. If you find any error at this stage, it's probably because the auth token wasn't corrected. Just try again, Docker login, put the correct auth token. But in the most of the cases, you will succeed with this. Go and find that the version was pushed. Let's minimize, well, restore this. All good. The example here is done with Java, but just for fun, let's change that. It's going to do exactly the same steps that I have done. The other thing that you can do is to run exactly that function. So if you say fn invoke app fn, the name of the app, and also the name of the function, in this case is test, we are going to execute that function, and that's fine. We are going to check that we actually push a Docker image into that. So let's go to developer services, container registry, and let's check. The result is what we expect, hello world on JSON. I'm going to call it again, invoke app fn test function, and I'm going to pipe that to JQ, so the result is nicer. The first time takes more time because Oracle Functions is going to download the registry image, the container image, and it's going to run it. So it takes a little while. And then after that, it has like a period that is going to be warm. So it's going to be executed and wait for someone to call the function. That's why after that, it's spin up. And the beauty of this is that if you call this 10 times, 20,000 times or 2 million times, Oracle Cloud is going to scale those functions for you without you having to worry about anything. Okay, so time for minimize this. And we can see that we push a new image called app.fn/test with version 2. And we can see that we can copy the pull command. This is just a Docker image. You can even build a function from a Docker file if you want to tweak some functionality. If we go to functions, we will see we have our app.fn. If we go to app.fn, we will see that we have our function because we deploy it. So that's brilliant. Now, it's time to come back to our developer service API gateway. We are going to create our new gateway saying app API gateway. I'm not really good with names, I know. It's going to be a type public, my compartment, that is all good. We are going to use demo VCN. We are going to use public subnet. That's all good. Let's create it. Let's wait for this to be created. Usually takes a few seconds. Let's wait for that. But in the meantime, I'm going to tell you things that are interesting in terms of observability. So we can take a look into metrics. At the moment, there is nothing because it hasn't been fully created. But you will see here really interesting information like API requests, API responses. You can see the bytes that were sent, the bytes that were received, and also the latency. Latency, the internal and the whole latency of the request. So that is really interesting if you want to check the backend timing, how long it takes the API gateway to handle your request, and so on. So we are talking about milliseconds, and internal latency is usually around microseconds. So it's very fast, very, very fast. Backend latency, so we can know if our function, it takes too long, and then that is going to help us to troubleshoot any issue. And we get the notification that the gateway is up and running. So that's good. Now, one step that we have to do is to create deployments. Deployments for API gateways are basically your API, your endpoint that you are going to offer to your customers. We are going to create a deployment, so let's call it deploy. We are going to say this is a /API, that is the base path. We are going to not modify this, but as you can see, we can integrate with authentication. So for example, JWT, and there are examples in the documentation how to do that. We can play around with CORS for cross-origin resource sharing, rate limiting to protect your function. So if you want customers to call it just 10 times every second, you can rate limit to that window. And the login, so you can select the log level, so from error to warning to information. Let's leave it in information. We can go next, and then we are going to define the routes. And this is really interesting. So in this case, we are going to say test/test. That is going to be the redirection to our serverless function. Method, get. And we have three types of backends. The one we are interested in is Oracle Functions, but you can redirect to an HTTP service. You can respond with a static content, but let's go for Oracle Functions. It's going to ask the application, our app FN. It's going to ask for the function inside of that, because remember, we will have a bunch of functions inside of your application. We are going to pick the test one, and we are going to click next. All good. We are happy with that. All the information. Let's click create. And this, again, is going to take a few seconds. But basically, in the meantime, we can just, oh, it's already, oh no, it's still creating. Something interesting that we have to look is if we step into the deployment, we are going to see that here we have the endpoint and it's already active. That's good. The endpoint is going to be the URL that we are going to use to hit that function. So we are going to go to the API gateway, and from the API gateway, we are going to hit our serverless function. We copy that, and we are going to use, why not, our console here. So I'm going to make a curl. I'm going to paste that, base path and /test. That will be our URL, the URL that we need to hit in order to go to the function, to execute the function. We are going to wait a little bit, and maybe I missed something. And this is something that happens all the time. I'm actually showing you what type of errors you can get. In this case, I think this is a timeout. it's happening, nothing is happening, and at some point there will be a final timeout. So I'm going to cancel this, and always when you hit a timeout, you should look out for a firewall policy, for example, routing on the network. So let's take a look to our network and think about it. We are asking API gateway to make a request on HTTPS. So that will be a port 443. Let's go to our virtual cloud network. Maybe the problem is there. I'm going to minimize this. I go to demo VCN. Everything happens in our public subnet. So let's step in, and then we have security list. Security list is like a virtual firewall that is executed by Oracle Cloud to prevent malicious requests inside of your subnet. So if we go to the default security list that was created by default when we create a VCN, we are going to see that we have an ingress rule for port 22, that is SSH. We have some other ingress rules for ICMP, that is for networking management, and is used by Oracle. And we should add a new ingress rule, and the new ingress rule should be from everywhere, source CIDR to protocol TCP, any source port, and the destination should be 443. We can add a description, it's optional, and that rule is going to be available there. So now, if we maximize this and execute exactly the same command, we are going to get our response from the function. I'm going to run this by JQ to have a nice result, and we have our message, hello world. So this is the way you can build your whole application with serverless. You don't have to worry about scalability, high availability, everything is there. If you have many customers asking for that, they are going to be served. They are going to get the responses, and you don't really have to handle anything. API gateway is fully managed. Oracle take care of everything. The Oracle Function service is going to take everything in account for scalability. And if you don't have a workload, for example, at 3 a.m. on Tuesday, then you pay nothing. And that's brilliant. I think you should try it. And thank you for watching this video.